Welcome back. So we got MiniMax M2.5, state-of-the-art, open source model, taking the crown, arguably, from the model that came out yesterday, GLM 5. And performance-wise, it seems to be in the tier of Claude 4.5, Opus, and GPT 5.2. It's not that important to go over like every single one, but also it's noteworthy that it is a massive improvement on its predecessor, like a crazy amount. And this is perhaps the most interesting part here, is that this is state of the art, but also it costs them $1 to run it continuously for an hour at the rate of 100 tokens per second. So arguably, possibly, this is the first model that is clearly profitable, or at least could be profitable. And overall, they're claiming that M2.5 performs on par with Opus 4.5. And Opus costs $5 in, while M2.5 actually costs the same money as the previous version, 0.3. We're going to talk about that. Also, it's noteworthy that the performance you're getting out of them does somewhat depend on the platform you're using. This was my experience as well, but it's not just necessarily the platform, but also the person using it, I guess, but that remains constant as you're using it, so you can't tell that. But partly my point here is that instead of possibly trying to make one of each, right? So you would see this, that maybe some kind of AI company kind of makes their own CLI, and they absolutely can, and it's going to be a little bit weaker, right? And it's also pretty good in to use. But personally speaking, I don't really pick and choose that much based on what kind of score you might get in some kind of a tool call benchmark. The expectation is that if you are going to use that tool, then it can do it. And effectively, it's taking second place to Opus in the GDP eval. And a good question is that, will intelligence matter that much in the future? Because right now everyone is like, oh my god, yes, we scored like 2 more points. But clearly AI is going to get to a level where it might not matter, right? Because it can already do the job. And this is already true in many contexts. And according to their claims, 40% of the tasks were automated away by M2.5, and also 80% of the code writing. My crystal ball is saying that there's going to be way more automation of other tasks, because at least code writing is assuming that you're writing new code is more of a hands-on experience. But most jobs out there are just doing the same thing, right? And if AI is smart enough to understand it and keep going, then it's gone. It's eliminated completely. And some might think that, oh, but AI can certainly not do the job I'm doing as well as me, right? Well, AI is pretty dang good though. So assuming it understands the task perfectly, then it does it perfectly. Well, maybe not instantly, but pretty damn fast and without errors. And we can see on OpenRouter too that it is actually just 0.3 in with a cache. That's 10% of the input price. And the cache matters more and more as we are getting closer to the point where cache is utilized very aggressively. Essentially, what really matters is the cache read. So I'm not sure if you had this experience, but at least some things do show it. Some coders, I think Gemini CLI shows this, or Kilocodes kind of shows this too, that you might see how much of your input was cached. And what you might see these days is that it's going to be 90%. So 90% of the time, you're going to be paying this much money. So assume you are more of a casual, meaning you're not like agentic, automate the whole world kind of person, then it might take you weeks to just spend a few dollars. But let's just quickly go over how the field looks now. So if it's like Claude Opus 4.5 level, then it really makes almost everything pointless. So arguably, if you want the best coding, then almost certainly GPT 5.3 Codex is still gonna be the best. But after that, I mean, even that arguably might not be the way to go. But after that, especially if you're considering value here, what do you go for? Like, you gotta keep in mind that this is 0 free in. GLM5 came out yesterday, and this is significantly more expensive with 1 in, and this would be still considered a good deal. But clearly Flash would make no sense. The regular Opus makes no sense. This is the non-thinking one. SOTA doesn't make sense. GLM 4.7 doesn't make sense. I mean, the closest comparison would be DeepSeek 3.2. So this is very close to money, but obviously not in quality. And then arguably Mimo Flash would be the one. And then you would have to think really hard if you want to go lower than that. So effectively this means that everything is dominated here, except maybe Mimo Flash, because this is like cheaper. But otherwise, this whole thing, well, I want to select like this, but these sideways words are kind of annoying to select. Anyway, so this is kind of what I'm meaning here. That these are utterly dominated and make no sense. Now, to be clear, even GPT 5.2 makes no sense, but I was just using it as a placeholder for the GPT 5.3 codex. And clearly any kind of value calculation is just comical now, because the old MiniMax M2.1 had the same cost, and well, it was weaker, I guess. It was more on the level of DeepSeek 3.2 and Mimo V2 Flash. But now, you have this price for, well, at least this performance, right? And especially Anthropic and OpenAI are pretty reliant on AI remaining expensive. But the only way that dream, so to speak, is carried forward is that they release like a little bit better model that's gonna cost like insanely much more money than the competitors are doing. Even the GLM5 that came out yesterday, I know this should be about like MiniMax 2.5, but it's just so recent that I must mention it, is significantly cheaper for a top 3 performance. And unless the prospect of paying like at least 10 times as much, and probably at least 20, for a little bit of intelligence, possibly a little bit more, and probably slower responses, then MiniMax is leading all the way. But of course, it really depends on what the others will do. But one thing that I don't have a lot of faith in is that they would drop the price. Only seemingly Chinese companies either keep the price or at least keep it lowish. And by the way, you can use their model for free. You can select it on their site. And you are also given 200 daily credits for free, I guess. I don't have a subscription. But if you want to use their model, right, then most likely the best approach is just getting the coding plan. Damn, for the starter. But realistically, you would want the plus, right? 1,000 prompts per 5 hours. It's kind of good to see it spelled out. I don't know if this includes a weekly limit. Hopefully it does not, because that would make it kind of pointless. But it is very nice to see in a field where others are super vague about it. I was gonna be like, oh yeah, man, maybe you gotta have like a more quota. Maybe if you feel like it, but maybe like we gotta give you double sometime. Otherwise, maybe like it's just gonna be real good. And you think I'm joking, but you can just read their offers. Also, interesting feature that I'm seeing is that they literally have sub-agents built into the chat. You can manage the sub-agents built in once. You can add sub-agents into the chat, and these have like tools they can use. Very interesting. So you can just mix and match sub-agents that serves your purpose. I'm not going to go over the others, but they tend to go for the, well, if I'm being generous, the accessible experience. So even if they have tools, they're going to hide it from you, and they might just use it a little bit. But generally speaking, they just don't have the tools, right? And even if they do, you certainly cannot customize it. And they also have experts that you can use for specific tasks. And presumably, this is more comprehensive than you just saying like, hey, I'm just telling you that you're like an expert in landing pages, so like, make it good, okay? And telling it to say hi to the audience, which would be you guys, took free credits. So if nothing else, that gives you plenty of tasks. And it's also viable for light work.